I speak to you in the name of the one holy and living God. Wow. It is wonderful to be here. It is wonderful to be with you, to be in this incredibly beautiful, holy place with you. And it was wonderful being on sabbatical too. Turns out the sabbatical was a season of beholding and being held, which is to say, allowing myself to be captivated by whatever happened to show up. Now, this took a little getting used to. In fact, it took me 6 weeks before I could stop pressing that lever of productivity. Now, Debra, what have you done to show for yourself today? What have you accomplished? How have you earned your way? How are you worthy? 6 weeks. And I kept pressing the lever until at last there was the least. It was the third morning actually, that I was staying in this tiny house called the Caribou Tree House. A picture of it was in the blast. It was a tiny house on stilts, and it stood among tall pine trees. So you looked out, and it was like living in the trees. And there was a 180-degree view of snow-covered peaks. So I woke up this morning and I said to my friend Mojo, those of you who don't know Mojo, he's my little 11-pound companion. I said, Mojo, what would you like to do today? And he looked at me with big eyes and he said, yawn and roll over, which I took to mean, please don't drag me up another mountain today. And so we sat. And we sat steeped in this extraordinary, unspeakable beauty. We sat until nature called us outside for our morning ablutions, him to his tree, me to the two-holer. And apparently, leaving the bright green door to the tree house open was all the invitation a ruby-throated hummingbird needed to come inside, rise to the peak, and endeavor an impossible task of drilling through glass. Well, I kind of held my breath as I watched this frenzied fellow striving. And he would strive and drill and drill and drill until he was spent, and then he'd retreat and he'd sit on the sill. But as soon as I would make any move to rescue him, to save him, like a rocket on fire, boom, jetted to the top of that peak. And he resumed his drilling, drill, rest, rocket, repeat. Drill, rest, rocket, repeat. I watched and watched until I thought, I've got a great idea. And I got my wide-brimmed red hat, put it on while standing in the door, figuring, I'll just pose like a flower. And surely this will lure him to come out the door to his freedom. Little fellow would have nothing to do with it. I did not make a good flower. And so he continued. Drill, rest, rocket, repeat, until he was spent. And he laid on the ledge with his little wings spread. And I thought, oh no, he's dead. So I got a cloth napkin and laid it over his feckless form, just like a pall. And ever so gently gathered him up. And I thought, I think I feel his heartbeat. So I took him outside and held him up, pulled back the pall, and I watched him ascend right after he circled my red hat. And do you know what happened next? I burst out laughing. Well, God, thank you for sending me a little neon messenger to remind me to stop drilling into glass. Stop pressing the lever just because you can. And I laughed until I felt something deep inside of me, this deep down freshness. And I heard, Debra, you cannot be saved until you surrender. You cannot be saved until you surrender. Be open. Well, the days were different thereafter. It was as if this, mysterious group of clandestine mountain monks were waking up much before dawn, getting out their spray paint cans to douse every leaf and every limb with effervescent sparkle. Because the volume of color and the fragrance of silence just exploded and utterly captivated me. I felt open, drenched, and held in this extraordinary beauty. Being held, I wandered through all kinds of places, but the thing that went with me was this. Words of the first reading, a poem that I encountered my first year as a seminarian in the Reverend Bill Countryman's Anglican Studies class. These words kept ringing through my soul. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil. Now, if you do not know Gerard Manley Hopkins, he is a poet of the first order. He's renowned as both a religious and a nature poet. Hopkins uses words to jubilantly paint the picture of how he deeply loves people and the world. And when at the age of 45, his earthly journey was coming to an end, these were Hopkins' final words. I am so happy, so happy. Is that not what we all long for? Would that we could be so open of mind and heart to behold and to be so held by this world, this beautiful world. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. These words accompanied me across deserts, climbing 14,000-foot mountains, flickering in the midst of aspen forests, sitting next to still alpine lakes, having lunch at a tiny mountain town amidst brilliantly colored umbrellas, standing in the snow. Yes, I like that. Wading hip deep in fields of golden wildflowers, and stuck in traffic jams. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. And, there's always an and, isn't there? There's always an and. And it's easy to lose sight of this. To cease beholding and being held in the grandeur of God. Oh, how swiftly we are swept away by blitzes of media breaking in with the breaking news that breaks us and then breaks out to more breaking news to break us yet again. Somehow, however, stands of giant ponderosa, they hail undaunted, even as pine beetles eat them alive. Somehow, charred limbs that have fallen from last year's forest fire give rise to the tiniest most delicate white lace fern. Everything changes, and nothing is lost. Nothing is lost because the world is charged with the grandeur of God, with a grandeur of God that has no identity politic, no partisan position, and no attachments. Because in Hopkins' word, there lives the dearest freshness deep down things within each one of us and all of creation. Everything is holy. Everything is holy. And even though it changes, nature is never spent. The grandeur of God rises from deep down things.